Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this. A nation vanishes, not in the thunder of falling bombs or the chaos of a collapsing border, but in silence. A slow, deliberate, and almost polite silence. History's grand stage remembers the loud tragedies, the wars, the genocides, the revolutions. But in the wings, in the quiet corners of time, a far more effective tool has been wielded for centuries. It doesn't break bones, it breaks minds. It doesn't take lives, it takes identities. Because when a people forget who they are, they forget to fight for what was theirs. What I am about to tell you is the blueprint of the quietest conquest in modern history, a story not of fire and blood, but of forgotten words and erased memories. Conquest, we are taught, is a visible thing. It has a flag, a uniform, a map redrawn in ink. We see the statue of the old hero torn down and the new one erected in its place. We document the moment of surrender. But what if the greatest victory for an empire is not a parade through the capital, but a generation of children who cannot even name that capital in their own tongue? Some empires learned that physical annihilation creates martyrs, fuels resistance for centuries. But cultural and psychological erasure? It creates ghosts. Ghosts who walk among the living, unaware they are haunting their own homeland. This is an erasure enacted not by soldiers, but by school teachers, not by decrees of execution, but by decrees of education, not by burning libraries, but by simply ceasing to print books in a certain alphabet. It is the story of how a people can be dissolved, not in a river, but in the slow, steady stream of time and forced assimilation. Step 1. The language. The first chord cut is the voice. A child is born into a melody of sounds, their mother's lullaby, their father's stories. Then they enter a classroom. Here, that melody is called dialect. It's called uneducated. It's the language of the past. Speaking it brings not punishment, but something worse, pity, a gentle, shaming correction. We don't speak that here, speak properly. The child learns to survive socially, to create a schism, the heart language for home, the official language for the world. Slowly, the heart language shrinks, retreating into grandparents' anecdotes, until one day it has nowhere to go but silence. Step 2. The history. Next, the mirror of the past is shattered and replaced. History textbooks become works of elegant omission. They start after the inconvenient glory. Centuries of a people's sovereignty become a brief, confusing interlude. Their heroes are rebranded as rebels, their golden ages as periods of chaos. When a child asks, "What did we do here?" the answer is vague, pointing always to the narrative of the larger, dominant culture. The ancestors become shadows on the wall, seen but featureless, nameless, claimless. And this is the masterstroke. The system doesn't need to be violently enforced forever. It simply creates a new normal. Street names change, city names change. The landscape itself is reintroduced. To get a job, you need the new language. To be seen as modern, you adopt the new customs. The old ways are framed as quaint, backward, something for folk festivals. People, in their desperate and human desire to belong, to succeed, begin to perform the erasure on themselves. They stop teaching their children the old words not out of fear, but out of a twisted love, a desire to spare them the burden of being different, of being less. The conqueror's greatest triumph is when the conquered become the enforcers of their own oblivion. But nature abhors a vacuum, and so does the human psyche. When you remove a pillar of identity, the structure doesn't just stand empty, it becomes unstable. What rushes into that void? A deep, unnameable longing, a generational grief for something they never knew. It manifests as a rootless anger, a cultural confusion. Who are we? We are not them fully, but we are no longer us either. This alienation is a fertile ground for crisis, for spikes in mental health struggles, for susceptibility to radical ideologies that promise belonging, for a simmering resentment with no clear address. The crime is not just what was taken, but the phantom pain it leaves behind. You may think this is a relic of 19th century empires or 20th century regimes. It is not. It is a living playbook. Today, the tools are more sophisticated, wrapped in the language of globalization and progress. A language dies every 2 weeks, not by ban, but by disuse, as economic pressure makes a local tongue impractical. Traditions become Instagram aesthetics, stripped of meaning and sold back as trends. Algorithms amplify dominant cultures, drowning out minority voices in a sea of sameness. Digital archives are controlled, histories are curated. This is erasure by 1,000 cuts, no single headline-grabbing atrocity, just the gentle, relentless pressure to conform, to simplify, to forget. It leaves no mass graves, only mass amnesia. Yet erasure is never final. Memory is a stubborn ghost. It hides in the recipe your grandmother never wrote down. It survives in the lullaby hummed off-key because the exact words are forgotten. It lives in the stubborn pronunciation of a family name, the one that doesn't fit the new language's rules. And now, in our digital age, the empire of forgetting faces a new foe, the network of remembering. A scanned document from a forgotten archive can circle the globe in seconds. A diaspora community can reconnect a shattered story across continents. The young, feeling that phantom pain, can type a question into a search bar. Who were we? This is how shadows regain their substance. Not always with a roar, but with a whisper that becomes a conversation, that becomes a chorus. The most dangerous question an oppressed people can ask is not, how do we fight, but who were we before you told us who to be? Once that question is asked, the spell of silence begins to break. Because the ultimate conquest is not measured by land taken, but the stories lost. And the final rebellion is not just reclaiming territory, but reclaiming the memory that you ever had a name for it.